See if I can send it out. Reconnecting. Apparently we are live. Lovely to see you, and to see you is lovely. Okay, we're trying using our microphone. Now we could stick it to the shirt, but I have noticed that if I put it down here, I'm not sure if you can hear me very well. So I thought I'd just put it up here. We'll talk about this. Thank you for the like. Lovely to see you. So I thought I would show you a little bit of a history here. Can I flip this? It doesn't seem to want to work now. Isn't that great? So now the live is not working. That's exactly what you want in life. Everything's frozen. Fantastic. That's great. Well, I don't know who's here, who's not, but we'll just talk. I wanted to show you the university. So for 2 years, I'm talking backwards in time, but for 2 years I would come here every day when I was studying a mathematics undergraduate, and I would purchase this coffee from there. And there's one person there who gives wonderful service, and the coffee is actually amazing. So it was lovely to see him again, because I thought, you know what, I just told him, I said, you gave such great service that I just had to stop, even though I haven't been here in a year, and to come say hello. So I would come here on the light rail. It would take a couple of hours each day and a couple of hours back, and I would study here. Yes, the weather wasn't always as beautiful, but it is beautiful at this time of year. And I would study as hard as I could and learning as deep as I could in order to succeed as much as I could, so that I could win the scholarship to get the PhD. And luckily that happened, and when it did, I was over the moon, and I got to move down to the lower half of the campus. I haven't been here in a long time, maybe a year or so. The coffee is still good. I didn't even know how much it cost. I think it was $4.60, which in Australia is actually quite reasonable for an almond milk cappuccino. So it was lovely. So, but the first time I came here, or if you exclude 1987, when I was a kid and my uncle was a student here, then my brother Micah was a student here in the 2000s, but I came here myself in 2017. I was just about to finish an honours in quantum mechanics and applied mathematics at another uni. I thought I'd come here and try studying pure mathematics. And I remember coming, enrolling and doing all of that and sitting in the class and having not a single clue of what they were talking about. It was a completely alien language. And I thought, I'm going to need to do some work. So I spent the next few years not only learning a few languages, but also, not a few, a couple, and studying pure mathematics just with pen and paper, and went through hundreds and hundreds of pages. And I decided I will resolve a problem that was solved by a famous mathematician in the past. And I thought, if I can resolve it without knowing anything about the topic, I will enroll back in uni. So I spent 9 months actually, and I had to learn all of these things which have names apparently, which I got to learn once I obviously got into pure maths properly. But I spent that time figuring out the solution. Basically, it was the algebraic solution to the cos of 2 pi over 17, which sort of is an algebraic way of describing how to construct a 17-sided polygon or a 17-gon. And or 17 or 16-sided? Ooh. No, 16-sided, of course. 16-sided, not 17-sided, sorry. So, apologies for those. But anyway, that allowed a beautiful way to explore mathematics without knowing the language itself, using just pictures and it made me realize that I could divorce the notation of mathematics from the patterns that were appearing in my head, which allowed for made good grounding for research. Because when it comes to research, you are stepping outside of the city into unknown territory, and you don't know what needs to happen at that point. And that comes to talking about how you can imagine AI as knowing the city better than anyone who inhabits the city. But you live outside the city. So you can communicate with AI to tell you what's going on in the city, but it knows nothing outside the city. So what do? You have to figure out what you can do, but then you can take advantage of the scaffolding that the city has used to then explain how you would solve unknown territory in a language that can then be scrutinized and audited. And so that's when I realized that mathematics notation, or what we call as humans, what we write down, is a language that represents something much more abstract. But we need it so that we can communicate those ideas, not only to each other, but to ourselves, so that we can scrutinize our own ideas and see where they break down, where they diverge from our intuition, where they align, which is a beautiful process in destroying your own, not destroying, but decoupling yourself from your own ego. You realize that you don't necessarily rely on your own intuition or judgment to arrive at a conclusion. You can think about things and then follow where logic and reasoning takes you. And it will push back against what you might think is the right way or wrong way to go. But to be open to always changing that, to adapting to what the patterns are telling you they are, is something quite remarkable. And then you find other like-minded people who think in the same way. Forgive the tautology. But what was I going to say? The older one gets, you know that this time of year is when the weather's perfect, and it only happens twice, spring and autumn at this distance from the equator. And it's the only time when the other side of the world, at the same distance from the equator, which happens to be where my family originates from, has the same weather. So it's nice. I feel connected to the homeland temporarily twice a year. But as one gets older, you start to not feel as though you, in your current form, is a part of this world. You think it starts to feel like you're visiting. And when you look around, you get to observe a place that you're visiting as opposed to something which you own. And that freedom from being tied down to thinking that you're this obligation that you have to somehow survive as being part of this world is quite liberating. So I get to enjoy that, the weather and the coffee all together. Now, talking about combinatorics. Combinatorics is the field in which Dr. Thomas BritZ resides in mathematics. And you might say, what's combinatorics? Well, I'll give you a basic example. Basic example of combinatorics is how many ways can you put your stuff in the fridge, and then a subset of that is how many ways can you put them in so that the things that need the colder temperature get the colder temperature so that they last longer. So that's another combination, which is a subset of the first combination. And what do you get from that? You get possibilities and probabilities. So if I were to put my stuff into the fridge randomly, what's the probability that I put them in such a way that's optimized for freshness? And then you can work it out. That's the beauty about combinatorics. It gives you structure, and from that structure you can work how to count possibilities, which then gives you probabilities. And of course from that you can go the other way. You can say, how can I create a situation where the probability of guessing something is so low it's almost impossible? And that's where you get cryptography. And of course cybersecurity. So this is how patterns in the field of combinatorics can expand into what people use for predicting weather patterns, possibilities of planetary locations, possible locations. And this is what Dr. Thomas BritZ works in. He's a senior lecturer at UNSW, and he is also a brilliant teacher. And he's extremely humble. In fact, he's so humble that I would say he's a humble genius. No, he has a super gift in being humble. And what do I mean by that? I mean that he is able to divorce his achievements from his sense of self-worth. And this disconnect is remarkable because it makes him very stable, independent of whether he achieves something amazing or not on a given day. And I watch that and I try to learn from that, because that is something which he is clearly developed in a remarkable way. He would hate for me to even talk about this at all. The guy has an IQ higher than most people on the planet, but he still would say he's nothing compared to those with whom he works. And maybe because he's around them all the time, it removes him from the reality which I've seen, which is that no, he's quite different. So it'll be a pleasure to talk to him for that reason. He's also an amazing teacher, as I said. So one thing he did with me, I was in a difficult situation and I was trying to study his course and I didn't have enough time, and he went out of his way to answer my emails before the course even started so that I could study the whole course. Therefore, when I got into the class, I was able to help other students, which he also supported, which other teachers might have gotten upset that, I wasn't going over their territory or anything like that, which was absolutely not the intent at all. In fact, he encouraged it. And it helped other students, and in turn they respected him for his ability to work with other people whom he taught himself. So it was remarkable, and he would have done that for any student who wanted to learn, and he didn't get paid for that or anything, just to help me every day with any questions I had. So that was wonderful. And you can see the other students, the way they talk to him, they look at him like, wow, like they just him because he is able to talk to them. You wouldn't even know that he was a professor or a doctor. You'd think he's just wearing shorts and jeans walking around, and but he's more than happy to help people as much as possible. He's also someone who's very aware of how AI has transformed what it means to learn and what is needed to be learnt, and he's very quick to catch up on that, where I think other people will soon follow, but I think that obviously large institutions, it's harder to follow that quickly because it is obvious to people on the ground. Even to myself, I've only been teaching at the uni for a little while, but it's obvious that there are things now that people don't even know how to calculate, which they don't need to know, sadly. So for example, when I was a child in the 80s, we learned long division. Now, once calculators were allowed, then clearly no one remembered long division. The problem in that particular case is that you lose one element of pattern recognition, which you actually need in what looks like an unrelated subject, being abstract algebra. So in abstract algebra, you might have an isomorphism between some ring, let's just call it a landscape that has 2 dimensions and another one that has 1 dimension. Let's just say this is not the correct way to talk about it, but basically what happens is that you can look at the 1 dimension as the remainder when you divide the 2 dimension by a 1-dimensional space. So imagine if you could divide a tree by a paper. Like, how does that even make sense? Turns out it does make sense. And if you know long division, then you recognize that in fact it's actually an analog. In other words, it's almost the same thing. It's just a more complicated version of long division. But that recognition of pattern, I was lucky that I studied long division 40 years ago, so I could remember that link. And then when I studied abstract algebra, I was able to pick it up at a pace that to others seemed unusual. But that's only because I had the memory of long division and I could equate the two. So I was compressing knowledge. It looked like 2 independent fields of knowledge, but in fact they were the same. They were just analogs. Similar to how Geoffrey Hinton talks about how a compost heap and a nuclear reaction both have a chain reaction, a thermonuclear chain reaction or thermo chain reaction, but the difference between them is that the amount of time it takes for it to occur, but the occurrence is an analog. One is an analog of the other. So you can compress what looks like 2 different occurrences or 2 different things you need to learn into one. So that's the part that concerns me, is that because now students don't need to understand how to calculate integrals, for example. Sure, you don't need to know, but the ability to understand what happens when you calculate, that itself is a pattern. And that pattern is extended into much higher abstract type of mathematics. So if you don't get the first one, it becomes harder to abstract out into the second one. And that's the part we don't want to lose. The actual act of the calculation, sure, it's not a problem. Anyway, I've got the booking from 12 o'clock onwards. So what time is it? It's 11:30. We still got time. So that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to see you. See you is a pleasure. And this was great. It was so nice to come back. I wish I could show you. Maybe I could turn this around. Show you what's going on. It's nice. Sorry, I'm just trying. Screen. But there you go. So yeah, we'll talk to you next time. And I can't even stop the live cast now. The whole thing's not working. Whole screen's gone. This is ridiculous. Whole screen's gone. What a joke. I have to reboot the phone.